beautiful people. Welcome to the Bl-Academically Speaking Podcast. I am your host, Monique Power, and I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today. Today is episode 1. Oh my goodness, guys. I cannot tell you how long I have been leaving this podcast, kind of sitting there, lingering, and I have not actually hit record until today. I am so excited to finally say that I am ready. I'm ready to be here. Some of you guys have been following me on Instagram for some time now. Maybe you are a part of my Facebook group, online community of teachers working to break down systemic barriers for our Black students and families. And if you are not on any of those two things, what are you doing? What are you waiting for? Go ahead and join the community, join the club. We are all like-minded individuals or individuals who are just in different walks and journeys, right? So I want to start off this podcast just by explaining a little bit more about what I intend to do, what this is meant to be, and how I anticipate to show up for you in this space. And as well to give you a little bit of background information about who I am, right? Who am I? Who is this girl with this amazing last name? That's the number one compliment I always get. So yes, guys, my name is actually Power. No S on the end, no powers. Please, please. It is just Power, okay? Thank you to my granddaddy for giving that to me. All right, so a little bit more about who I am. So like I shared earlier, my name is Monique Power, and I am a educator by trade, right? I think I've gone through the typical journey that all of you have maybe gone through, or maybe not everyone who's listening has gone through, and that's okay. No shame in the game, okay? We're all here for the same purpose, same goals, okay? To learn more, to educate more, to engage in conversations, so it's okay, all right? But yes, by trade, I am an educator. I went to the University of Guelph, whoop whoop, and got my degree in biology, and I also minored in molecular biology and genetics. So scientist by trade as well. And, I left myself at the end of that 4-year run wondering what to do next. Well, not really. I think we all go into any type of biology, biological science, biomedical science programming thinking, we're all going to be doctors. That wasn't my path. That wasn't my path. I became a mommy very early on in my post-secondary educational career. So yes, I'm a mommy to 2 amazing Black boys who I will definitely be dropping gems on as we continue in this journey. So you'll learn more about my boys, as we head along in this show. So I completed my degree there, and because I was no longer headed the medical route, I decided to use a lot of my skills and my assets and things that I knew that I definitely loved. I had this genuine care for all little humans, not just the little ones, big ones too, okay? No discriminating over here, but definitely a love for my people, and not just my people, just people in general. Genuinely love people and wanting what's best for society, wanting what's best for everyone. I hear of a child not eating and I'm emotionally in tears or something like that, wanting to give all of my money to their family. Like, I'm just a big sob in that department, guys. So as you can imagine, as I began my educational pathway to become an educator, which I completed that degree at the University of Toronto, whoop whoop, right? U of T. So again, dropping gems. But yes, when I went over there and started to engage in master's level work and started to embark on my, my field of research, I already knew what I was going to focus my pathway on, and that was the disparities that we see in the Black community from an educational standpoint. And I already knew of the disparities. I'd done a lot of community outreach as I was an undergrad student, not only working as a tutor, mentor, supporter, working with a bunch of nonprofit organizations who specifically look to, help Black families access education, on a dime or, free of cost, and support for learners, right? So I could see the disparities, and I think it was obviously abundantly clear to me when you get to university spaces from high school spaces, it's like night and day when you see the demographic of students, families, staff, even around you that are just not reflective of your high school atmosphere. High school is free education. High school is a mandatory. High school is a must, right? And so, thankfully I came from a very diverse high school, very diverse community. But that was not reflected when I got to university, whether it was at Guelph, no discrimination, okay? No, whether it was at U of T, it's just the status quo is that we just don't see those same faces and bodies end up in those spaces. And that was something that really piqued my interest as to why, right? You being the person who quote unquote made it, right? Why am I not seeing more people that look like me? Why is it that in a school with thousands of students, there's literally like 100 or less than that of Black students, right? So, that piqued my interest. And so that's where my research endeavors began. And that's kind of where I began kind of my journey into equity related work. And so from there, I obviously have, solidified my experience and portfolio in the educational space, working for private schools, public schools, all that stuff. I'm a high school teacher. And I've kind of moved and kind of rolled out of the quote unquote teacher role and more into a consultant position. So I consult from an equity perspective, being able to speak of research guided work and research evidence-based work, being able to guide educators, administrators, and so forth on ways to, improve practice throughout the building from an equity stance, and being able to discuss, power and privilege and white supremacy and how all of that shows up in our educational spaces and ways to dismantle, right? Ways to dismantle. So I've done that in the educational world. I've also been able to consult in other sectors as well. So the health sector, I have the health sector under my belt as well, being able to guide institutional practices. I look and reflect on ways in which different communities are disproportionately, impacted by certain common day practices. So this is kind of who I am, guys. I am equity all the way around, through and through, and this is what I love. And so with this podcast, my goal is to not only to allow for there to be this two-way conversation. I know you're going to hear me talking for quite a bit of the podcasts and episodes to come, but I really don't want this to be a one-way conversation. I really, really, really intentionally plan to make this a two-way conversation, which is why before even getting the ground running, I have already, started my Instagram where I have my DMs wide open. I have my groups on Facebook where I want to hear from you, right? I want to hear from the voice of the community, whether you are a community where you are, you hold an identity who has been on the receiving end of discrimination and oppression, or maybe you're not on that end of the spectrum, and you're more so wanting to identify ways in which you can better show up for your marginalized members and peers and students and families. Okay, so regardless of where you are, if you're coming just to listen, then yes, absolutely listen. But I really want to hear from you. I want to hear, what episodes do you think are necessary? What conversations, bold, big conversations, do you think we need to have? I'm a very, 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 very honest person, and so sometimes I get kind of slapped on the wrist because of my honesty. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes you can see everything that needs to be said just by looking at my face, which, kind of comes with my Black identity as well. We're very, we're very much so able to have a whole conversation just with looks alone. Okay. It's a skill set. All right. And if you're privy to that, then you're privy to that. If not, it's okay. Okay. But, I really, hope to, engage in this two-way dialogue where we can have a conversation. And, I have some amazing people that I've been able to communicate with and I have been in community with and have at my disposal, and that I will be leaning on, because in no way, shape, or form do I plan to come to you as an expert, right? I have no way, shape, or form plan to come to you as a know-it-all. I am not a know-it-all, okay? Let me be the first to say I am not a know-it-all, but I am invested. That is one thing I can say. I am constantly looking for, what's on the come up, right? What's new? What's the next best strategy? What has been proven to work? What are things that people are tinkering with? Ideas? What is still happening? Not just from a local perspective, from a global perspective. Like, I'm constantly looking to stay up to date with this work, and so. You may find me reading from time to time, whether it is an actual book, whether it's a scholarly article. Like, these are things that I do, and I want to be able to share my finds with you guys. So if you are an educator listening, again, I highly encourage you to engage with me in multiple ways, not just this podcast, because I do intend and have been just sharing resources, whether you are an elementary teacher, even though I'm not necessarily elementary, quote unquote. I do teach and support educators that are from the elementary panel. But I am high school. So I'm going to self-identify right now. I am a high school educator. But at the same time, a lot of the work that needs to be done in this space, in my humble opinion, can really lean on our elementary educators. You guys have a very, very, very unique opportunity to be able to dismantle and disrupt a lot of the inequities that we see in society, just because of the fact that you have these little people at their very precious moments in times, very impressionable moments in their lives. So if we can capitalize on that, I think that we would be much better off, right? I think we would be much better off. So, not only do I plan to share resources and share knowledge, perspectives, insights, I plan to bring, people who are way more knowledgeable in this space onto the show, and have, again, open, honest dialogue about what's happening, what are we seeing, where can we go from here, that type of thing. And also, I plan on having, students who are in our Ontario, education system, so that they can share their perspectives, they can share their experiences. And so whether I'm speaking to, current high school students or students that just had graduated and now gone on to post-secondary, but again, their lived experience are so very telling and so very informative and so very impactful to be able to gauge the work that we do. So I want those voices to be brought to the forefront, and that is something that I absolutely wholeheartedly intend to do. And so again, I am apologizing profusely, friends. I am apologizing profusely. I know that I owe lots of apologies because this podcast has been sitting there lingering, and you're like, when is this thing going to actually start? When is she actually going to post? What is going on? I know. I'm not going to lie, guys. I am human, and there's a big part of me who has been battling and struggling with imposter syndrome. This idea of like, who am I, right? Who am I to be able to speak to these concepts, these ideas, and, the way in which these things show up in our educational spaces and how they impact our Black students and families, right? Bl-Academically Speaking, that name didn't come out of nowhere. I was toying around with so many different names, but Bl-Academic just spoke to me. And it's really being able to say, hey, education happens in many ways and shapes and forms. And massive students go through, yes, quote unquote education, but those experiences, they look different dependent on your identity, the identity that you hold. And whether that is from a positive perspective, and we happen to sit on the side of being in a place of privilege, or in the other end, right, where we start to see the disproportionate outcomes, we start to see the disparities, and we start to see, the marginalized communities and the oppressive practices really shine through. So we want to kind of figure out ways and share ways, right, from a very vulnerable place, a humbling place. This is not a place where I intend or will support or will encourage any type of bashing. We are all in different walks when it comes to this equity work, right? We're all in different places when it comes to this equity work. And so we need to kind of have a little bit of grace, right? We have to have a little bit of grace for people who might just being able to tiptoe on this journey. Maybe you just listening to this podcast right now, even though it's episode 1, that is your little cracking open of the door to say, okay, maybe I want to peek into this. Maybe I'm ready to confront my unconscious biases. Maybe I'm ready to confront how whiteness shows up in our educational system. And even though I'm using words like whiteness, be prepared. I will absolutely unpack what that word means. It's not how it sounds, right? It sounds as if oh my gosh, you're attacking my skin. You're attacking who I am. You're attacking me. That's not what this is, friends. Okay? That's not what this is, friends. When we use words like white supremacy and we use words like whiteness, just know that is rooted in things that predate you. Right? It's rooted in practices and experiences and things like the transatlantic slave trade that all predate your existence. Believe me, right? I don't care if you're 60, 70, 80 listening to this right now. A lot of what we saw and a lot of what you see happening right now are a result of things that pretty much are, based and rooted in discriminatory practices that had nothing to do with you. But unfortunately, it has built a society where there are some people who are, again, on the pain of privilege and happen to be able to be advantaged, right, by those structures and things that were put in place, and some that are disadvantaged. That's it, right? That's it. And so we just have to have an honest conversation about where we sit, right? Where do we sit on that spectrum, right? Are we on the side of those that are advantaged? Or are we on the side of those that are disadvantaged? Or are we kind of somewhere in between? Because believe me, friends, when it comes to the identities we hold, and when it comes to discrimination and oppression, there is a slew of different things that may cause us to be on the oppressive side, right? Or on the side of the oppressor, right? Because when it comes to discrimination, there's a wide variety of different types of discrimination that exist, right? It's not just ones that are rooted in race. There are discrimination that's rooted in, religion, right? And religious practices, right? How does our educational system show up for those who identify as Christian versus those who are Muslim, right? How does it show up for people who identify as straight and heteronormative versus those who are on the opposite end of that spectrum, who identify as being a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, right? And even if we think about it, just ableism, how does our education system show up for those who are able-bodied, right? And not just able in body, but able in mind. Can we talk about that for a minute? Can we talk about how our education system shows up for people who identify as having different mental health conditions, right? On the spectrum, with autism, battling depression and anxiety, right? Because I can tell you from my lens as an educator and being a part of, the system itself, being privy to conversations that happen in staff rooms and conversations that happen in department meetings, board meetings, you name it, I can tell you, friends, that it's not status quo for everyone, right? We all are not benefiting from this system equally. That's why this conversation is so important. And that's why it's so important that we be bold. We be bold in the way that we address some of the data that supports these inequities and disparities, right? So that's kind of the bulk of what I intend to do, right? And believe me, I'm with you if you are kind of like, okay, things sound good, but where is she going to go first? I don't know. I don't know. I'm toying with ideas in where to go first. So feel free to comment in anywhere that I'm posting this. Leave me a DM, send me an email, all of the above. I am open to hear from you. Where do you suggest we go first? I know where standard practice lends us to go first, okay? I've been in a part of this space long enough to know that sometimes history is where we begin with these conversations. But, I'm not sure if I want to start with history. I'm very much so a person that likes to shake things up. I don't necessarily like to always do the status quo. So, those historical piece and reference, talking about colonialism and all of that and some of the, historical events that have kind of been relevant to this conversation, especially from a Canadian perspective. Yeah, I do think it's important we address at some point, but I'm not sure that's where I want to begin. So, that being said, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you in my DMs. You can contact me or reach me at Bl-Academically Speaking or BL Speaking on all, social media. So BL Speaking is my handle on Twitter, on Instagram, and we can talk about these things there. Or you can even send me an email, like I said, right? It's blspeaking@gmail.com. So, and again, if you're a part of those Facebook groups, then you already know that we're in it to win it, right? And if you'd like to join and be a part, I will leave all of the details, in and around wherever this video is posted, so that you can join the club, join the community of BL warriors, okay? Black academic warriors, where we're ready, right? And I think that's the overall message I want to send with today's recording. Although it's short and sweet, I want us to all stand firm in our positions and our opinions of being ready to confront, right? Ready to hold on, steadfast, and ready to make change. So I'll leave you with that for now, and I will catch you guys on the next episode. Bye, loves.